Hey gang, Sally here. Happy New Year. Hope you're having an amazing and fascinating day. I know I am. And it's pretty late on New Year's Day at this point. It's about 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And believe it or not, I've been working on this pretty much all day long. What I've got coming up for you is a year in review, and I'm pretty excited about it. What I decided to do is I'm going to let all of the photos and little snippets of video play in the background while I talk to you about what's been going on, what it is that, what's happened this year and so forth. But before we get to that, I definitely want to, first of all, wish you a very, very happy new year. Hope you're looking forward to amazing things for 2025. I want to thank you for being here. I appreciate the time that each and every one of you take to watch my videos and leave a comment and give us a thumbs up. And, if you haven't already, maybe subscribe. If you think you are, double check to make sure. Okay, without further ado, let's roll the intro, and then we're going to get into everything that happened in 2024. Welcome back. Okay, we're going to actually start with December 31st of 2023 because, that's New Year's Eve. That's the beginning of the rest of our lives, right? And I'm not going to describe every slide that you're going to see. I'm going to just let them run. They are running in chronological order, starting from December 31st until December 31st. So the last slide in here is going to be actually from yesterday. And if I run out of things to say before we run out of slides, which may be likely, because I think I've got 194 queued up, and I had trouble picking just that few, and you're going to understand why in just a moment. Because I'm going to give you a bunch of statistics and stuff while these are playing. All right, we're going to start off talking about travel. How far? How did I do it? All that kind of stuff. So first of all, I traveled 13,404 miles last year from January 1st until December 31st. And of those 13,404 miles, 12,389 of them were driven. And then 996 were walked, which was actually less than I walked the previous year. That was slightly disappointing. I think in 2023, my total mileage walked was 1,023, but not that far off. And 19 miles by boat. So that was kind of cool. And in all of that traveling, what is it that I like to avoid? Well, I like to avoid highways. I like to avoid big cities. I like to avoid crowds. And I like to avoid the most popular destinations. The places where most people are trying to go, that's the place I'm most often trying not to go. So where do I go? I like to go to quirky spots, and you've seen a bunch of them. I like to go to National Park Service sites. And I couldn't add up exactly just how many I have done this year. It's been a lot. But I've done on the National Park site service on the National Park Service app, you can check off all of the sites that you visited. And so I looked this afternoon and I'm up to 134 different sites visited. I'm willing to bet that I probably saw probably 40 or more this year. And I can tell you why I know that in just a minute. So in addition to the MPS sites, I like to visit rivers, I like to visit lakes, I like to visit the mountains, and as I discovered this year, I really enjoy visiting the beach more than I remembered that I did. Um, the reason that I can guess pretty accurately that 40 sites is about right is that I visited 26 states this year. And some of them I visited multiple times. So that's 26 individual states. I was in, and this is kind of in order from west to east, California, Arizona, New Mexico, Oklahoma, Kansas, Nebraska, Iowa, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, Pennsylvania, New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, Connecticut, New York again, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Maryland, Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Florida, California, Arizona, and New York were visited multiple times actually throughout last year. California, Arizona, I was bouncing back and forth quite a few times. And then New York on my way all the way up to Maine. And I ended up coming back through New York as I was working my way down through New Jersey and then back into Pennsylvania. Oh, Pennsylvania was visited multiple times this year too, come to think of it. So out of those 26 states, and I had to do a bit of research on this to make sure I got it right, 11 of those were new states. So I had not previously, and this is visited in my RV, by the way, not ever visited. I'd never been in Kansas, Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, Connecticut, New Jersey, because I actually lived there for a while back in the 80s, North Carolina. Uh, I'm sorry, North Carolina is incorrect. I forgot to pull that off the list. South Carolina is correct, and Florida. Because and I had to actually go look and figure this out because last year I was in North Carolina as I was coming south, and I knew that I was in Georgia, and I had to look at my trajectory from last year. And yeah, I skipped South Carolina. I kind of did this diagonal thing that got me from North Carolina into Georgia last year. On January 1st, I am still in Florida, and I'll probably be in Florida for the next few days. I'm kind of looking forward to getting out of Florida. I'm kind of at the point now where I've done so much traveling this year and seen so many different things that I'm kind of ready to get back west and slow down and be able to boondock for real without a whole lot of planning as I've had to do here. So here's another little interesting fact. So let's go back to 13,404 miles traveled. I took, and I'm not counting what I recorded as content creation for the channel. I took 4,189 photos and videos on my phone. And in addition to my phone, for content creation, I use two different GoPros, I use a drone, and I use my Osmo Pocket 3. And what that comes down to is basically one photo or video for every 3.19 miles traveled. That's crazy to me. It's crazy to me. Okay, before we talk about the actual camping numbers in terms of dollars, because we're going to do that, I want to explain what I meant when I said that I did a lot of camping for less. So I spent pretty much from the middle of March until almost the end of July, primarily in New Mexico state parks. And I'm going to explain to you how that worked in terms of finances because it was a smoking hot deal. It's not smoking hot deal anymore. There's been some big changes for 2025, and I've got another video coming out that will explain what those are. Completely separate thing. It's very complicated. In 2024 and previous years, you could buy a New Mexico State Park annual camping pass as a non-resident of New Mexico for $225. Annual camping pass. That's not calendar year. That's the full month of starting with the full month of the month that you bought it in. I think I bought mine on November 2nd of 2023, so it was good until November 30th of 2024. So it just expired a month or so ago. $225. Now, what do you get for your $225? You get to camp for free in any New Mexico state park, as long as you don't want hookups. So you can use any of their dry camping sites at no additional charge other than that $225 that you already paid. And so that's absolutely a smoking hot deal, especially for people like me. I've got plenty of solar, plenty of batteries. I don't need hookups. Now, I did have hookups some of the time. I actually went through the effort of booking campsites for holidays like around 4th of July and Memorial Day. I booked and wanted to make sure that I did have electricity because I was concerned about heat in the areas that I was going to be in. So for those times, it basically costs $4 per day for electricity. 4 times 28 is $112. And you also have to pay a $12 reservation fee for anything over 3 days of reservation. So that additional $12 makes it $124. But there's a $12 reservation fee for each reservation you're making. That's 2 reservations. So then you add the second reservation fee. It's $136 for 28 nights of camping with the annual camping pass through 2024. It changes in 2025. So for $136 a month, I could have electric hookups, and I did that a number of times. I didn't do it every time, but I did do it sometimes. And in certain cases, if I was going to be in a place where I was afraid it was going to be pretty difficult to find a site, even without electricity, I would make a reservation for that. And in those cases, it could be up to a $12 reservation fee to ensure that I had a place with a number for me. So, did that a few times. So that's why it was cheap, because that was a super cheap way to do it. So that really cut down on my overall costs for the entire year. And to give you an example of what that looks like, this is small print, sorry. I spent approximately 134 nights in New Mexico State Park campgrounds. I also spent 10 nights in Army Corps of Engineers campgrounds in New Mexico. So the basic categories are Corps of Engineers, local, like it belongs to a local municipality, city or county would be local as far as I'm concerned, state, which would be a state park, or private, which would be like an individual campground, even chains count as private as far as I'm concerned. So I won't give you every number for every state, but let's look at Army Corps of Engineers, for example. In New Mexico, I stayed 10 nights in Corps of Engineers camps. In Kansas, it was 3. In Virginia, it was 10. In Florida, it's been 6. So that's a total of 29 nights in Corps of Engineers camps. In Kansas, I found an amazing, I think it was county park that was, it was called it was a golf course. It was public. It was a golf course. They had a pond. They had a disc golf course. They had beautiful walking trails, and it was $15 a night, full hookups. And I was happy to have it because the temperature soared to 108 degrees. That was late July. It was hot. It was awful. And, yes, my house has a steering wheel, and yes, I could have driven away, but I didn't do it because there are things that I wanted to see, and I didn't want to get too far down the road to be able to do that. So back again to state parks, 134 nights in New Mexico state parks, 9 nights in a Maryland state park, which was kind of funny. That ended up costing me more than it needed to because I made a reservation for 3 nights at Assateague Island. I got there, I enjoyed it so much that the next day I made a reservation for 3 more nights. And the day after that, I said, oh, why not? And I made another reservation for 3 more nights. So I ended up paying 3 separate reservation fees in total for my 9 nights. If I had known that I was going to like it that much, I could have just made one reservation and saved $24. Oh well. So that was a total of 143 nights in state parks, 7 nights in local parks in Kansas, 29 nights in an Army Corps of Engineers camp, and I only stayed in one private campground this year, and it's a doozy. Oh, by the way, all of these slides that you're seeing, these are not only the slides for the videos that are already out, because as we know, I'm way behind on getting travel videos published, but you're going to get sneak peeks on what I've been doing beyond what's already been published for those travel videos. So let's look at the numbers. Let's see what that looks like. I paid a total of $992.25 for camping all year long. That's 180 nights of paid camping, and that averages out to $5.51 per paid night, which really, not bad, right? That's why the New Mexico State Park Pass was such a great deal. Now, of that $992.25, remember that one night that I spent in a public campground? That was $249.75 for one night. Yep, just one. And that was kind of my Christmas present to myself. That was December 15th, and it was just north of Key West. So what happened was it was about 120 miles from one end of the Keys to the other, from the north end down to the south end. And I definitely wanted to go to Key West, and I had some specific reasons to do that. I'm not going to share my spoiler alerts on that with you yet, but that video will come out eventually. And I knew that trying to do, the 120-ish miles on the way down, do what I wanted to do in the Keys, and drive all the way back would be, 240 miles of driving in one day, trying to do stuff. I thought, nah, that's going to be a miserable day. So then I looked at alternatives to being able to doing it that way. And ultimately what I decided to do was book a campsite for one night. And the campsite that I booked um, was the most expensive one, the most expensive type of site that you could book at that RV park. But I did it because the cheapest one, which would have saved me almost $100, not quite $100, um, it was surrounded on all sides, both sides and, at the back. So I would have had 5 people basically surrounding me. And I hate being that close to people to begin with. And I'm thinking, if I'm spending that kind of money, if I'm spending $150 for a campsite, which is what that would have been for one night, I want to be comfortable, which is why I decided to spend the extra $100 and be comfortable. So I had an oceanfront site, and the only neighbor I had was on the driver's side. And the way that the sites were laid out, they were actually parked far enough back that I didn't even notice that they were there. They didn't interrupt me at all. So that's where, a pretty significant chunk of that $992 came from. So the remaining $742.50 for the other 179 nights averages out to $4.15 per night. Now, I want to back up to the New Mexico State Park Pass thing for a minute, because the prices that I'm quoting do not include paying for the park pass, because I had already paid for that in 2023. Does that make sense? So let's throw out the outlier of that $249 night, counting the amount that I paid to camp and the fact that I camped for 364 days, because we're throwing out that one night. That means my average cost per night was $2.03. I don't know. I think that's pretty cool. What do you think? And I did have some amazing times all summer long, all the way through the fall into the winter. And, everybody always says, what was your favorite part? I was outrageously surprised at how much I enjoyed Maine. And part of what I enjoyed about Maine was the people that I got to meet there and hang out with. And I'll tell you the truth, and if they're watching, I hope they're not upset when I say this. But I found this beautiful site up on Seboyas Lake, which is half an hour or so from Millinocket. Free camping. They only have 4 designated sites there. I got there, and there was nobody in the area with 2 of the sites, which is where I wanted to be. I took one of the sites, and I'm feeling pretty punk about this. It's like, wow, I got this whole place to myself. It's awesome. And then just shortly before dark, somebody pulled in, pulling a fifth wheel, not a huge one. And they obviously knew a thing or two, because they whipped it in, backed in right away, and got themselves set up. And I was kind of looking at the way that they had tucked themselves into the other site, and I'm thinking, that's kind of an odd way to park from my perspective. And then a couple hours later, after it was already dark, somebody else pulled in, pulling a bumper pole, and they whipped in and turned around right away. Oh, and parked with those people. So now I understood why it was that they had parked the way that they did. And then the other family members showed up the next day with their dog. Uh, get this, Kit became great friends with everybody, as did I. And I really appreciate how much this whole group took me in. They took me sightseeing with them. They fed me. They fell in love with Kit. Kit fell in love with them. It was pretty awesome. And then I got to meet another guy who was actually from Canada. And he was down there for a while we were there as well. So I invited him to come over, and, he got to meet everybody. So that was very cool. And I'm not naming names because I haven't asked anybody if I could. So they'll remain anonymous. That was one of my favorite times of this entire year. And I ended up being there for 2 weeks. They were there for a week. And man, so nice. The day that they were going to leave, one of the guys took me in his truck with all of the big containers that we could gather from everybody else. And there was a spring about 5 miles away on really bad dirt roads, so it took like 45 minutes to get there. But he took me down to the spring. We filled up all of the containers that they had brought, and then siphoned it into my freshwater tank, so I was able to stay for another week without having to leave. It was awesome. And my tank was filled with fresh spring water. It was really awesome. That's one of the things, those moments don't happen every single day, but when they happen, they definitely stand out. And so I really appreciate the kindness of former strangers and now friends in being able to handle that stuff. So that's one of my favorite places. I was surprised at how much I enjoyed visiting forts this year. And one of my favorites was Fort Knox. That video isn't out yet, I don't think. Nope, because that was in Maine. So we haven't gotten to Maine yet. We just got out of well, in the video that I edited yesterday or today, we just got out of New York. We're into Vermont. Yeah, we just got into Vermont. But we don't spend a whole lot of time in Vermont or New Hampshire before we get up to Maine. And Maine, as I said, was just amazing. So I started learning about forts at Fort Knox, not the one in Kentucky, the one in Maine. Um, and I learned about third system forts, and I started visiting forts as many places as I could as I was coming down the coast. And it was pretty interesting because as I was talking to rangers at some of these sites, and I'd say, "Oh, so I didn't realize that there was another third system fort here." And they'd kind of look at me like, "Why do you know about third system forts?" Well, I did a little research because you know, I like that kind of stuff. So I had a lot of fun with that. I enjoyed the battlefields that I saw this year in some ways more than the ones that I saw last year. In other ways, pretty equal. I always enjoy going to the battlefields as well. I really like history. And I find that I learn a lot of things that either if I learned them in school, I certainly don't remember. But I think in most cases, I probably didn't learn them in school. I think that history has been rewritten throughout the ages, and I think we're trying to do a better job of correcting our rewriting of history. Hope that makes sense. What else did I enjoy? Uh, Man, I did the whole Network to Freedom Underground Railroad thing. I have been like chasing that all over the East Coast, and I bet you there's more of it that I'm going to see in other places that I had never thought of before. So the whole Underground Railroad thing. It's most famous for Harriet Tubman. She kind of got the most promotion out of it, I think, in terms of people that were involved, but lots and lots of people were involved. So I guess one of the first places that I visited that was an Underground Railroad site on this round, I think, was the in Ashtabula, and I didn't actually get to go into the museum because it was closed the day that I was there. Oh well. I did get to explore the marker for the train wreck while I was there, though, and that video is out. So if you haven't seen it, you can go see that one. But then as I moved up into New York, I visited Seneca Falls, New York, which was a lot of fun because that's the site of, or that's potentially the inspiration for Bedford Falls in It's a Wonderful Life, but it's also kind of the birthplace of the suffragette movement for women. May not be the birthplace, but it's pretty much, I mean, I think it is actually pretty much the birthplace. And Harriet Tubman was involved in all of that as well. She spoke at the Women's Convention and so forth. She also had close connections to New York, which I had not realized until I was up there. She had a home in Auburn, New York, that in part she was able to purchase because of her association with the Sewards. And so she had this, I think it was 7 acres she ended up with. Might have, I think it was 7 acres, can't remember for sure. That video just came out recently, so, go watch that one. But I got really intrigued by her history and her activism and, many of those things to the point where she's one of the only people, I think she is the only person that actually has two national park sites named for her. So there is one in Auburn, New York, which is not her home that I went to. That's not a national park site per se. But I did go to the one in Auburn. And then her real big national park is down in Maryland near Church Creek, which is where she grew up and lived. Now, and so as I got further south, and I visited a number of other sites along the way before I got down to Maryland, but as I'm getting further south and I'm thinking more and more about where it is that I'm going to Cambridge. Well, I had relatives from Cambridge, and I kind of lost track of that fact. And it turns out I was able to figure out that Harriet Tubman and her father, Ben Ross, were felling trees and selling them for lumber. And I am 99% sure at this point, because I don't think there was another lumber mill around, that they were selling them to the lumber mill on Taylor's Island. And I'm pretty sure that has to be right because it was like less than 3 miles from where they were timbering. So what's important about the lumber mill on Taylor's Island? Well, my relatives by marriage owned that. So, and I was able to trace back that part of my ancestry. and they were active in the same time period that she would have been active. So it's quite likely that my relatives actually knew Harriet Tubman, which is, kind of cool and certainly unexpected. So, yeah, all kinds of interesting things that I got to learn along the way this year. I also, and this is probably one of the highlights, I visited with two of my first cousins, um, one of whom I don't think I'd seen in 50 years. And actually, I think I may not have seen either one of them in 50 years because we decided they weren't at my father's funeral in 2003, which would have been the last time that I would have seen them. And unfortunately, my father died in 2003, and then their mother died shortly thereafter, also in 2003. So it's been, decades, many decades since we've seen each other. Their family has six kids, and mine had three. And basically, our families kind of stayed apart from each other, except for maybe once a year on Christmas Day. That was the only time we'd ever see each other. So I visited with my cousin Sue in North Carolina for a couple of nights, and we just had a great time. And then I went from there and I visited with her brother, my cousin George, and his wife Sue in South Carolina. We had a great time there as well. I wish I had scheduled more time with them. But my brother, who lives in Hilton Head, had a relatively short time window available for me. So at that point, I had to book down there to get to go see my brother for a couple of nights. And that was also really great. So getting to see family has been a lot of fun. I'm in Florida now. I'm not as excited about Florida as I really thought I would be. And I think part of the issue for that is Hurricane Helene and whatever the other recent one was. I can't remember which one that was, but apparently Helene especially did a lot of damage to a lot of areas. So my plan had been to stay free at a lot of the WMA sites, wildlife management areas or water management areas. They're both WMAs, but two different entities. And they have a lot of camping sites available, which is just awesome. But many of them were closed because of Helene. And so you couldn't get in. You couldn't go camp in those areas. And that meant that, I had been putting up with tar docking a lot because it's really hard to find free camping in the East. And then my hopes were dashed when I got into Florida and found out that I really wasn't going to be getting much in the way of free camping, and I was still stuck tar docking for the most part. I have, however, found a few really nice places to free camp in Florida, and I'm in an Army Corps of Engineers park right now. This is my last night here. And it's kind of funny the way that I planned it. I mean, I planned this, first of all, so I'd have a place to land over New Year's. And secondly, so that I could do some things. So I've made ginger beer and pickled onions, with fermented onions, actually. And I'm still going to make a loaf of bread tonight while I can run my oven on electricity. And I've got plenty of hot water for cleaning up and all that kind of stuff. Oh, I cooked turkey yesterday. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun. So what's 2025 going to bring? Well, who knows for real? Who knows for real? My basic plans are I'm working my way along the Gulf Coast. I'm working back toward Arizona. I want to be back in Arizona before it gets too hot to be there and too hot to walk into Mexico so I can go see my dentist. And then from there, I need to be up in Nevada in March so I can get my driver's license renewed. And I'm planning to head north from there. I'm going clamming with a friend up in Fort Stevens, I think toward the end of May. I think it's actually Memorial Day week. We're going to be up there. And then I'm planning to hit the northwesternmost point in my Geographical Extremes tour, which is something up in the northwest corner of Washington. I can't remember the name of. And hopefully, do some stuff around Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, that area for the rest of the summer. And beyond that, I have no clue at all. And that's still just a very loose plan. It could change. It could change. So, I had a thought and I just lost it. Doggone it. I can't remember. Well, maybe it'll come back to me and maybe it won't. But let's talk about some other plans that are coming up for 2025. Let's talk a little bit about what's happened with YouTube in 2024. I think I've got some pretty cool stuff here as well that I just wanted to share with you. I know it's probably not as interesting to you as it is to me, but just in case, we got 686 new subscribers this year. I got monetized late in September. Yay! So I'm actually getting paid now. Not much, but I do get a little bit of money. Um, I published 266 videos this year or last year. 29.9% of my viewers are subscribers. That means 70.1% are not subscribers. So if you're watching this and you aren't subscribed, why not? I mean, it's and you know, a lot of other YouTubers that I'm friends with say the same thing. It's shocking that many fewer people subscribe than actually watch our videos. Once I reached the point of becoming a YouTube partner, then I was able to open up channel memberships, and so I had 3 channel members join almost immediately. I would love to see some more of that. So if that's something you're interested in, there's always a link in the video description. You can just click the button and sign up right there. A couple other statistics about viewers, which I think are kind of interesting. 76% of my viewers are male, but it's the women that comment most frequently. So guys, leave some more comments. Why not? Here's a really interesting one to me. 46.1% of my viewers are under age 54. So does that mean that I appeal to mostly to young men? I don't know. And I mean, quite honestly, I'm kind of shocked at the fact that such a preponderance of my viewers are male as compared to female. Um, I don't know. I don't know how to characterize that. Video wise, I'm trying to bring you relatively frequent cooking videos, and I've got a bunch of stuff in the pipeline that I just haven't gotten to yet. You know, the tips and tricks. I'm going to show you how to clean RV shower drains in a upcoming video. Won't be too long before that comes out. And so what's the deal with the videos, right? The hardest part is always getting them edited and uploaded and published. So for example, part of the reason I'm so far behind on my travel videos, and if you're paying attention, I've been publishing a video every other day. I started off initially 1 a week, and then I was doing 2 a week, then I was doing 3 a week, and then I just switched to every other day, I think in the beginning of October, in an effort to try and get caught up on travel videos. And there may be like a whole bunch of travel videos in a row coming out in March, because I want to try and get a little further along so that I'm a little bit closer to real time. But I always enjoy doing the tips and tricks. I enjoy doing the cooking, and based on the number of views, you guys enjoy that too. So if you stuck with me this far, and I hope you did, let me know what you thought of this video. Leave a comment down below. You know, give me a thumbs up. Share some ideas about things that you would like to see that I may not have done already. And if you've got any questions or whatever, I'm happy to answer them. Something else that I think is going to come up in 2025, and I haven't decided how to do this for sure. I think I'm going to start doing a monthly live stream.
All right, guys, how cool is this?
I did one on Christmas Day, and I did it completely impromptu. I didn't advertise it at all.
Last
I
night.
had,
I
think the
heard them
most I
last
had
night, and
on
he woke
while
up
we
and started
were
barking.
live was
All
8
right,
people.
check this out.
But it's gotten a lot of views subsequently.
Tour of Engineers
so,
campgrounds
I'm
really
thinking
are
it
the
might be
best,
worth doing
guys.
that. Let me know what you
I
think
love
of that
being on the
idea as
water,
well.
love the views.
And I have
Now,
also,
this
as
is
a result of
actually,
the live
much
stream,
closer to the water
I've
than the
also
site that
started
I
publishing
have.
on
I still
a
have a water
ribbon
view, but this is the way it is.
on each video. So near the beginning of the video, it'll say what date it was actually recorded on, because I am so far behind. And some people said that, you know, it helps to know when it was recorded, because that might help with, you know, whether you need to make reservations or not, what time of year, and all those kinds of things, which makes sense to me. So I think that's all I have for you. Once again, I want to thank you so much for watching. I want to thank you a lot for having subscribed, for those of you that have. I really appreciate each and every one of you that are taking the time to watch my videos, and I hope to see a lot more of you in 2025. Have a great evening. Bye for now.